Well, look what we got here. Girly Bear in before the bell. How you doing today? How was your weekend? Whoa. Mine was okay. I pretty much stayed up the whole weekend till like midnight or so playing games, so I was super tired on Monday. So I went to bed about 9, took some melatonin, worked all weekend. Oh, I played all weekend. I was working hard at not getting sleep and losing horribly at games. That's what I was doing. And I thought I could swear that we had Dungeons and Dragons this weekend on Sunday, and I was totally wrong. So I spent the rest of my weekend basically lying in fetal position, crying myself to sleep at night because we weren't playing. So other than that, I was good. But we do play this weekend, so that's a good thing. Yeah, I play something called Phoenix Point. It's a tactical small team thing to save humanity from aliens, and I'm tactically impaired as an individual, so it makes playing games like this challenging, fun, but also frustrating as hell because I suck at all those sorts of things. But I enjoy it. Other than that, it's been good. No, it's a computer game. Here, I'll show you. Next point. You can see what I was searching there. How to defeat a layer. That's what's been kicking my ass, defeating a layer. Yeah. Well, this is the beginning. Yeah, something like this. It's not this pretty, but something along this lines. Not that pretty. Definitely not that pretty. Yeah, like this. Got aliens to defeat. You got a small group of people. Right, currently I've got like three planes flying around the... It is cool. It's a lot of fun. I've got 3 planes flying around the world trying to save it from aliens, and I need to get one more plane, and it's not a plane, it's a helicopter. But as you saw from the search bar, I'm having a bitch of a time defeating layer. I've got one layer there that keeps throwing aliens out and invading different places, and I have to find a way to stop it. I spent probably an hour or 2 trying to defeat it on Saturday or Sunday or something like that, and it's just frustrating. So I spent some time searching for different ways of defeating those. So I'm gonna have to give that a try because it's not being able to defeat that layer is holding me back. I've never even come close to defeating this game, ever. So this is the closest I've come to doing that, and I've been playing a lot more aggressively than I have previously. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, there we go. How was your work? Not too painful, hopefully. Never ending? Oh, sorry to hear that. Well, I did convince the wife to go ahead and have us get vaccinated. So we're going to be working on that. Hopefully the next, I don't know, whenever we'll get our vaccine. And this chat drives me crazy. Oh, this cat. Oh, yeah. Yeah, working from home with a cat can be frustrating. I'm very fortunate that ours isn't frustrating. He's a good cat. As far as cats go, he minds himself pretty well. Yeah, cats. What I've said before is cats are great. They're great with fries. Nom, 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 nom. He walks back and forth on my papers. Oh, and the keyboard. Oh, yeah, no. Ours will lay on papers, like that I put on the bed. If it's mine and it's on the bed, he'll lay on it. But he's not allowed on the desk at all. Stay the fuck away from my computer. So yeah, he doesn't go on like the tables, the counters, the desk. We made sure to train him very quickly that he wasn't gonna be doing that. So he's fortunately learned that lesson, and I don't have to really worry about that so much. It's much nicer now with the newer computer that my computer is up. Before you try to get kind of under my desk or even use, I haven't caught that little bastard on top of my computer, which was under my desk. Being comfortable, like, oh no, you didn't. But now it's up here next to me, so it's a lot safer. Yeah, you got to get them early and make sure they understand that they don't do that and be consistent on it and keep them the hell off. Yeah, keep your pee and poop-filled paws off my keyboard. My desk is the only surface he walks on. Oh, really? Yeah, well, if you're there a lot, then yeah, he's probably trying to insert himself into what's going on to make sure that you know that he still exists so you don't forget to feed him. Because cats are always starving. Always like, oh, I haven't eaten in like 10 seconds. Yeah, that sucks. That sucks. Well, good luck with that. Gave him a jump. Oh, okay, that's only around it. Yeah, I saw a picture on Facebook where this people were having cat issues, and they were like, he always wants to be on our lap. So we created this fake lap, you know, like a pair of legs with jeans, and so that the cat can sit on. Yeah, well, if that works, that's good. That's good. Hopefully it works for you. Yeah, I know, right? Cats. Ugh, right? Huh? Best creatures ever. Lies. All right, got lots of stuff going on for today. This is just for people's information here. The Louvre's entire art collection is now accessible online for free. All right, we got that. All right, and this is also something for just free information in case you live under a rock like I do. That the Suez Canal was blocked. I think they recently fixed this giant ass container ship. The Ever Given has blocked the Suez Canal and global trade for days. When did this one come out? May 26th. Yeah, so it's been fixed since then. But just so you know. It's a thing. I haven't covered it yet because I've had other things to cover, but it's a thing in case you're wondering. Oh, do you? Oh, that must have been how much of a hell has that been? Has that affected you in your work? You weren't over there? Oh, okay. Yeah, but in your news circles, that must have been fairly big. Okay. So this. Mayor fucking Pete. They go up through the canal, thankfully not during that. Okay. All right, well, good. I'm glad you weren't affected by that. I'm sure that would have been frustrating as hell. All right, so what we got here today to start, we're going to start with Mayor Pete is a Weasel. I really dislike this man. Like horribly dislike this man. Fucking Weasel of the highest order. So this is reposted by Nick Hanauer. He's like a millionaire or billionaire who's kind of one of the, quote, good ones, who says, tax me. He has up like a podcast where he talks about the harms of capitalism and, inequality and that sort of stuff. So that's pretty cool. I've been following him for a little while. So he reposted this. Transportation Secretary Mayor Pete Weasel says taxing drivers by the mile shows a lot of promise and could be a way to fund big infrastructure overhaul. Fuck this guy. God, he just pisses me off. So there's just a bunch of bullshit here, and it's so stupid. What I wrote, texting you guys, talking about Nick here. The rich funds percenters is a really great idea to absolutely work towards the abject destruction of inequality, which is the greatest harm humanity has created. Yeah, it is. It's super stupid. is super stupid. Just because, I mean, as I'm going to point out here, you don't need taxes to afford anything on the federal level. It's so ridiculous. It's just another way of punishing the poor's, the 99%, to subsidize the socialism for the rich in the corporations. It's a way to keep us poor while making the 1% in the corporations rich. All Congress has to do is just pass a law to fund infrastructure upgrades, and magically, the money's there. No compromise or discussion needed, just pass the law and fix the stuff. This sort of capitalism whore talk is there in order to keep the people divided and poor. There's no need for any of it. Oh, and fuck Weasel Boy. Yeah, this is just, it's ridiculous. It's just simple. Congress passes a law, the money's there, and then you fix the stuff. That's it. This is just class warfare 100%. That's all this is class warfare. Like I need another reason to revile Mayor Weasel. I mean, I truly do revile this guy. He's just horrific. Horrific. So, that's the thing that Buttigieg is thinking of. All right, so enough whining about Mayor Weasel. All right, so here's this article. Previously, what I've seen, it's been a few years since I've seen articles on this, a few years at least, that minimum wage would be $44 today if it had increased at the same rate as Wall Street bonuses. So the previous one I'd seen was like $32 an hour is what minimum wage would be if it kept up with Wall Street bonuses, and that was just a few years ago. So here's one with a significant update on that. It just kind of goes to show how out of control Wall Street bonuses are. And then, of course, minimum wage hasn't increased in, 20 years? And this is from just yesterday, actually. Since 1985, the average Wall Street bonus has increased 1,217% from $13,970 to $184,000 in 2020. A new analysis released Monday by the Institute for Policy Studies shows that the U.S. federal minimum wage would currently be just over $44 an hour, more than 6 times higher than the current wage floor, if it had increased at the same rate as Wall Street employee bonuses between 1985 and 2020. But during that 35-year period, the federal wage floor remained largely stagnant, while the average Wall Street bonus soared by 1,217%, IPS finds, citing the latest data from the New York State Comptroller. $7 an hour federal minimum wage has not been raised since 2009, leaving minimum wage workers worse off today than they were more than a decade ago due to rising cost of living. While low-wage workers are still waiting for a raise in the minimum wage, Wall Street employees enjoyed a 10% bump in their bonuses in the first year of the pandemic, noted Sarah Anderson, director of the Global Economy Project at IPS and the author of the new analysis. Since 1985, the average Wall Street bonus has increased 1,217%. Okay, from $13,970 to $184,000 in 2020. These bonuses come on top of salary and other forms of compensation. Anderson added the average salary with bonuses for all securities industry employees in New York was $406,700 in 2019. At the very top end, CEOs of the top 5 U.S. investment banks hauled in an average of $27.9 million in total compensation in 2019. Almost $30 million per year in compensation. So, all right, here's a neat graph showing the federal minimum wage down here in red, of course, because it's the blood of the innocent. And then blue here, bumping up, bumping up, bumping up, bumping up, bumping up, bumping up. It's going higher and higher. It's going to keep getting higher while ours stays down here. This is just the epitome of class warfare. How we poors get jack shit, and socialism for the rich keeps getting higher and higher. All right. The IPS report came as Democratic members of Congress are attempting to chart the best path forward for a proposed $15 minimum wage bill after senators removed the legislation from the recently passed coronavirus relief package, citing the unelected Senate parliamentarians' advisory opinion that the measure runs afoul of budget reconciliation rules. Now, if you want to see this absolutely completely ripped apart, I don't know if Mike from PA Central _ Committee did. Oh yeah, actually, this was on he was a guest on some channel, and they were ripping this apart. They did a great analysis of why this is total and complete bullshit. I think the basis of it is minimum wage increases income, which increases taxation, which increases the federal budget and taxation. So it definitely would fit. As Congress has left the federal minimum wage at a starvation level, Anderson pointed out, federal regulators have refused to implement Wall Street pay restrictions mandated by the 2010 Dodd-Frank law, allowing financiers to accumulate large bonuses as low-wage workers struggled to get by on stagnant pay. These two failures speak volumes about who has influence in Washington and who does not, Anderson wrote. Pulse Modeling Company. Hey, how you doing, man? What are your thoughts on the recent China and Iran strategic deal? I don't know much about it. I've just heard that it was a thing. If you have a link on it, we can go over it. I think this is China attempting to position itself as the new global leader, with the United States faltering under Trump. But I don't know anything about it. Okay. All right, we'll go through this right after we finish this one. Okay, dismiss. No, can't see anything. Oh, it's just a video. Okay, all right. We'll go over that in just a little bit. We're gonna finish this one first, then we'll get over to that. Thanks for sharing that, man. Okay. To rein in the soaring compensation of executives in the financial industry and throughout corporate America, Anderson urged Congress to consider two recently introduced bills, including Senator Bernie Sanders' Tax Excessive CEO Pay Act, unveiled earlier this month. The legislation would raise taxes on companies with a CEO to median worker pay ratio of 50-1 or higher. Okay, so that's not bad. But I take a much more aggressive approach to this. I say not median pay, because that's ridiculous in the long term of things. I have it based off the lowest person paid, and also including anyone that they hire through contracts or through other people. So like if Nike is using sweatshop labor in Vietnam or whatever, then it also includes that as well. So if they're getting paid dollars per day, if anything, then that it should also be included in there. So dollars per day, so 50-1 based off the lowest paid worker, based on your contracts and everything, and go from there. And it shouldn't just be, what do they say here? Raise taxes on companies with the C. Okay, so yeah, so we raise the taxes on the companies, but it should also be raised on the upper level management as well. Needs to be super aggressive to make sure that they don't do stupid shit like this. Not just that, right? With my policies, right, there's a maximum wage, 100% marginal tax rate. So it should really be that, honestly. So that having 100% marginal tax rate prevents this period. It's you make, you set the ratio based off the lowest person in the entire chain, production chain, and then 100% marginal tax rate at the top area, at the top bracket, and then you're done. Anderson also pointed to the Stop Subsidizing Multi-Million-Dollar Corporate Bonuses Act, Democratic legislation aimed to end special tax deductions for huge executive bonuses and prevent publicly traded corporations from deducting the cost of multi-million-dollar bonuses from their corporate tax bills. Okay, that sounds good. In this new political landscape, Anderson wrote, lawmakers have a chance to end the Washington gridlock that has kept the federal minimum wage a poverty wage while allowing the reckless bonus culture to continue to flourish on Wall Street even during a pandemic. So, I mean, what they're talking about is a good start, but it really needs to be just a maximum wage. You set a low maximum wage, a high minimum wage, and then run from there. All right, so we've got something here on. Okay, so we have an article on what is China and Iran's strategic deal. The two countries have signed a long-term agreement worth billions of dollars. It's been in the works since 2016. Okay, so since Trump came into power, or since the election year, right? And is now being dubbed as a comprehensive strategic partnership. A deal signed between China and Iran is expected to boost their longstanding economic and political alliance. The cooperation will cover a wide range of Chinese investments in Iran's most important sectors, including energy and infrastructure. It's the first long-term agreement of its type to be signed by Iran with a leading world power. It also comes at a tough time for Iran's economy that has been devastated by U.S. sanctions, of course. The pact was signed in Iran's capital, Tehran, on March 27th, coinciding with the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Iran. Okay, but in a volatile region, what do both countries stand to gain? And should people in the Middle East and beyond be worried? Okay. Questions? Yeah. So, I think the sanctions have to do with nuclear weapons, right? Isn't that what that is about? And that was this started by Trump? Because Trump withdrew from the treaty or whatever. So if Trump had not messed this up, this might be slightly different. Although they said it's been in the works since 2016, right? Well, let's take a look. Let's see what they have to say about this. I don't know if we'll listen to the whole thing, but let's see what they have to say. Do they have? They don't.
It's been described as a strategic deal. China and Iran have signed a long-term agreement worth billions of dollars. But in a volatile region, what do both countries stand to gain? And what does it mean for the Middle East and beyond? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Darine Abougaida. It's been in the works since 2016 and dubbed a comprehensive strategic partnership. The deal signed between China and Iran is expected to boost their long-standing economic and political alliance. The cooperation would cover a wide range of Chinese investments in Iran's most important sectors, including energy and infrastructure. It's the first long-term agreement of its type to be signed by Iran with a major world power, and comes at a tough time for Iran's economy that's been devastated by U.S. sanctions. The pact was signed in Iran's capital, Tehran, on Saturday. That coincided with the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Iran. Well, China is Iran's long-standing ally and one of its largest trading partners. The two countries are believed to have shared an annual trade worth at least $20 billion in recent years. In 2016, Tehran and Beijing agreed to boost that more than tenfold to $600 billion over a decade. Now, both nations have strained relations with the U.S. and are under sanctions imposed by Washington. China's opponents say.
Yeah, so kind of like I was saying that part of the issue is going to be the U.S. sanctions. Since it is affecting both, it's about two, large nations helping each other out. It also benefits, of course, China from the standpoint of becoming a much more influential global power.
This cooperation deal aims to expand Beijing's economic and political influence in the Middle East. Tehran is hardening its stance towards the U.S. and the European signatories of the 2015 nuclear accord. And
Yeah, I tend to agree there. I think that's exactly what's happening here, and that's of course because Trump and the sanctions. I'm assuming this happened under Trump's, if I remember that correctly. So yeah, of course he's fucked everything up. Hey man, how you doing? Robert Gusak, how you doing today? Adam, Wanker, good to see you too. How you doing today? How you guys doing today? Thanks for stopping by. What's up, peeps? We're covering some Iran-China stuff. Don't know much about it, but we're watching this video on it so we can figure some stuff out. Not much politics. That's exactly right. That's exactly what's going on here. Not a whole lot. Recovering from the weekend. Stayed up too late playing games. So I had to take melatonin last night to get my sleeping back in order. But yeah, doing okay. Doing okay. How are you guys doing today? Politics. Gucci? What about Gucci? Are you wearing Gucci? I don't wear Gucci. Jeans. Does Gucci make jeans? They must. Like $10,000 a pair of jeans. Opinions on the Africa's collective GDP is 1.6 trillion, roughly equal to the Brazil. Okay, Russia. Yep. Africa's combined consumer spending is 860 billion, greater than that of either India or Russia. Yeah. So looks like you're getting into the thought that Western imperialism is raping Africa, which is exactly correct, right? 0.6 trillion. All right, looks like you're gonna type up a bunch of stuff. I'll let you go and do that, and we'll continue on with this. This is like a fairly long video.
It's demanding U.S. lift sanctions before it holds talks to revive that deal. Well, the former President Donald Trump pulled the U.S. out of the nuclear deal and reimposed sanctions on Iran in 2018. Now, China is a signatory, as are Russia, France, Germany, and the EU as a bloc. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has voiced his appreciation of Beijing's support for Tehran's position on that accord, saying cooperation between Tehran and Beijing is important for the implementation of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and Europeans' commitments to the deal and can change the existing conditions. Well, China says the cooperation deal with Iran does not target any country.
The plan focuses on tapping the potentials in economic and people-to-people cooperation between the two nations and making plans for long-term cooperation prospects and paths. It does not include specific quantified contracts or indicators, and it's not targeted at any third party. It is believed that this plan will provide a large-scale framework for future cooperation between China and Iran.
Let's now bring in our guest in Beijing. We have Einar Tengen, who's a political and economic analyst. In Tehran, Hamid Mousavi, a professor of political science at Tehran University. And joining us from Brussels is Teresa Fallon, who's the director for Center for Russia, Europe, Asia Studies. Welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us on Inside Story. Teresa, by laying out this strategic plan with Iran, is China positioning itself as a great superpower and sending a message to the U.S., or is it coming to Iran's rescue with the nuclear deal hanging in the balance and the country suffering under U.S. sanctions?
Yes.
Well, I think it's a bit of both. Actually, we've seen a huge momentum growing. We saw Secretary of State Blinken's visits to Japan and South Korea as part of the revitalization of alliances, then the meeting in Anchorage between the Chinese and the U.S. the first time during the Biden administration. And that was quickly followed by Secretary of State Blinken's to NATO and then Lavrov's visit to China. So this is part of a growing narrative. At the same time, the EU imposed sanctions because of human rights abuses in Xinjiang. And then we saw it was very well coordinated because then the US, the UK, and Canada also had the same sanctions in regard to Xinjiang. So I think that this is part of a longer wider narrative. I imagine that this agreement has been under negotiation for quite some time, but the significance of it being announced on Saturday in this momentous week of activity in regards to Russia, in regards to China and the U.S. kind of allying with various groups. And in addition to that, we saw the PRC Secretary of Defense traveling to Serbia, Hungary, North Macedonia, and Greece in order to kind of say that we will do defense cooperation with them. And also Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, was in Turkey. All of this within the last week. So I think it's an incredible period. And China always says we don't like Cold War thinking, but it seems that China is trying to signal that they have these alliances. Iran has long been a key issue for them on the Belt and Road Initiative. It's a good match. Iran under sanctions really needs new infrastructure and investment. It grabbed headlines, 400 billion. We don't know if that's real or not, but I mean, it would be some money up front for Iranian oil. And I think that it also kind of throws a little bit of a wrench into the JCPOA negotiations. The Biden administration has made it clear they would like to see some form of a concession from Iran before they begin further negotiations.
All right. Hanauer, Teresa is right when she says it's been negotiated for a couple of years, because this agreement was in fact proposed back in 2016 by China. And there was a draft of it that was leaked to the media last year. But why do you think it's gone ahead now?
Well, quite frankly, I mean, as Teresa mentioned, this has been a momentous week. Obviously, the key here is orchestration. The U.S. and its allies is, as Biden said he would, is trying to put together a gang of countries who are going to put China in its place. If you think about the parallels here, it's very clear that we're entering this kind of position of pre-World War I, when an ascendant Great Britain was concerned about a rising Germany and was making up all these alliances and things like that. In essence, trying to avoid war, they stumbled into it. And this is the worry that we have here. But I would take one issue with what Teresa said, and that is this idea that it's China engaging in Cold War thinking. She acknowledged that, and we've all said that this has been orchestrated on the U.S. side. The unilateral tariffs have not been withdrawn. Instead, there's almost a daily drumbeat of negative press of actions against Chinese officials, more piling on in terms of economics, delisting Chinese companies. This can't go on unanswered, and this idea that it's somehow China's fault that the U.S. is attacking it is, I think, a false narrative.
Teresa, I'll give you the chance to respond in just a moment, but first let's get the point of view from Iran. Hamid Mousavi, Iran is betting on China, ultimately. Is this going to be a good bet for Iran, and how are people inside the country viewing it?
So this is something very significant for Iran. Iran has been under intense pressure ever since Donald Trump came into power. And unfortunately, the Biden administration is also following the so-called maximum pressure campaign. So Iran's economy has been under a lot of pressure. And essentially, this agreement will give Iran breathing space against U.S. pressure. It will give some leverage in potential nuclear talks. But the long-term issue here is that Iran is signaling to the West that the more pressure they put on Iran, the more Iran will go to the eastern camp.
Yeah, essentially, if you're not going to work with us and you're going to be a total fucking dick, we'll find help elsewhere. And then China's sitting there waiting, and they're willing to help. So that's, that helps to reduce the amount of leverage that the West has over them when we know that they've got big China in the background waiting to help them.
And even right now in Iran, we have calls from the parliament that we should devise something similar with the Russians. So I think if this trend continues, then Iran will become very closely allied with the Russian and the Chinese in any future, if you'd say, confrontation against the United States. In Iran, there has been some criticism in the sense that Iran's revolutionary slogan over 4 decades ago was neither East nor West. So some people are criticizing and saying, why should we go into the Eastern camp? Or if we are putting that slogan aside, maybe it's better to join the Western camp. But nevertheless, this is something that has been clearly supported by Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran. So it's not even only the government of Hassan Rouhani, but something much larger.
Teresa, go ahead and respond to what my guest from Beijing had to say about China sort of instigating Cold War. That's what you said. In fact, he disagrees with that. And also, to what extent do you think Washington is really going to be worried about this deal? Because Iran's supreme leader back in February said the post-U.S. era has started.
Yeah, so the post-U.S. era, right? That's United States is going down faster and faster, and then yes, China is trying to position itself as a global power, taking advantage of the broken foreign policy of the United States to gain more leverage, to gain more finances, and gain more military backing to protect itself, to further protect itself from Western pressures.
I mean, is this politicking, or is there some truth to that?
Well, I think there's a bit of a future bomb in that for Iran, because China's policies in Xinjiang might, the type of re-education camps, as the Chinese themselves have described them, this caused a lot of friction with other countries. And if Iran is willing to turn a blind eye to that and to get investment from China, this might cause problems further down the road. We saw with Wang Yi's visit in Turkey, there was huge protests against what China is doing in Xinjiang. In addition to, China has these agreements that they negotiate over time, and then they can actually agree to them finally at the most particular time in history where it has a maximum impact. We've seen that in Europe with the Comprehensive Agreement on Investment and EU-China Investment Agreement that was long negotiated for 7 years, 35 meetings, and it was agreed in principle on December 30th under Angela Merkel, who had the rotating European Council presidency. And German interests are largely in this agreement because of German car industry and other interests in China. So I think that China kind of kept it on low burner until it had maximum impact, because the U.S. administration had said, wait, we're coming in. The new Biden administration was coming in.
Mm-hmm.
There was kind of a period of transatlantic drift under the Trump administration, and the Biden administration made it very clear it wanted to revitalize relations with allies. So by giving last-minute concessions, Xi Jinping stepped in, gave last-minute concessions to the Europeans in order to get this over the line, meant that in one sense, they were hoping to buy Europe's silence. And so I think that's why the counter-sanctions that China put on Europe showed the extent of their anger. So the sanctions that were put in place on Monday, the 22nd, were quickly followed the same day by counter-sanctions, which actually sanctioned members of the European Parliament, and the European Parliament must ratify this economic agreement. And by doing that, they've actually alienated them. So China has kind of overplayed their hand. They not only sanctioned European.
Yeah, Paul, I wouldn't. Yeah, the United States and the West has done horrible, horrible things to the Middle East, and finding an ally that won't necessarily do that to them that does make a lot of sense. Honestly, the United States has done nothing but no good over there at all. Destroying these countries and stealing their resources, just like we've done through Africa and through India. The Middle East is no different. Again, the United States' foreign policy is murdering people of color globally for fun and corporate profit. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. A lot of sense. And of course, that's all up to the U.S. to fix. If they'd stop exploiting and destroying these countries and actually being a partner and helping them, become better, things could be radically, radically different. But imperialism is what we do, because that is what makes our government's corporate owners all the big monies, regardless of how many people die in the process.
Leaders, they also sanctioned the Political and Security Committee, which is made up of 27 EU ambassadors, and their families are included in that sanctioning. And they sanctioned an entire German think tank. So they want discourse power as well. They want to say, we don't like what you say about China, so we're going to sanction even an academic institution. In addition to that, they even sanctioned the head of a Swedish think tank. So I think they misunderstood Europe very much, because when you attack people who want independent academic inquiry into what's happening in China, or you have politicians who are asking what is happening in Xinjiang. And when you sanction them, this badly backfired because they're attacking freedom of speech and basic rule of law and even the very roots of democracy.
Well, speaking of sanctions, Einar Tangen, I mean, there are sanctions on China and there are sanctions on Iran, U.S. sanctions, that is. So how much of this deal can actually be implemented with these sanctions limiting how much Chinese companies, how much business Chinese companies can actually conduct in Iran?
Well, they can conduct quite a bit, and with the digital yuan, it'll probably increase. Teresa has given a long narrative, kind of long.
Oh yeah, that is a good point with the digital yuan that China's implementing to basically take over as at least attempting to have it take over as a digital as the digital reserve currency. These sorts of agreements could make a huge difference towards that. If part of that these trade agreements with Iran and whoever else is that they have money stored or they're going to do their trade in the digital yuan, that could make a huge difference in the global trade.
Laundry list of things that she thinks are going on. I think
China holds most Bitcoin in the U.S. I could believe that. I mean, you've got the bunch of people sitting there doing mining in MMOs, like entire farms of people just mining, being paid to mine gold and characters in MMOs. That Bitcoin seems a natural extension of that sort of a thing. Oh yeah, definitely. I could believe that.
From Beijing's point of view, the situation with Xinjiang, they see it completely differently. They see it as a necessary step and something that they've done in all parts of China, which is, in essence, to teach people the history and language so that they're not stuck in a backwater and unable to seek meaningful employment. China's the one who's been taking people out of poverty. They have not been, segregating people on the basis of who they are. They have driven
right,
up
but just allow me. I mean, Xinjiang is a topic that needs an entire different program. So let's just get back to the deal at hand, which is the deal between China and Iran.
Yeah, between China and Iran, it's a geopolitical shift. I would agree with my colleague from Iran. They are looking east. How long that will happen, I don't know. But the reality is that the money is moving east. Oil, energy is being used in Asia at far greater levels. The United States is, in essence, pretty much self-supplying as long as the price of oil is above 45 and they can use fracking. Europe is another matter. They're somewhere in between. But yes, this does give Iran breathing room. Hopefully, it will not be an excuse to continue with nuclear capabilities. That is not good for anybody. But there has to be a very clear and open stance on this thing. The fact it's the worst kept secret in the world that Israel has nukes, plenty of them, and is willing to use them in the case that they are overrun. So, I mean, at this point, it really, if there is going to be a denuclearization, if Iran, China, and the U.S. are going to start cooperating along with Russia and Europe, there has to be some absolute clarity here and stop with this kind of narrative that, you're doing this and therefore I'm responding. I would agree that China is stuck in this kind of tit for tat response to the U.S.
Yes, of course. Yep, pro-Palestine, BDS the shit out of Israel. That has to change. I mean, they're committing genocide against the Palestinians. I mean, it's not even a conversation. It's a thing. So, yeah, of course.
I don't think that is going to solve anything. There has to be some more creative thinking and more thinking in terms of the international situation. What's happening between these two powers is having an immense effect on the rest of the world and preventing, in many cases, real progress being made on the pressing issues today of climate change and COVID-19.
And also the nuclear deal, which we'll get on in just a moment. But Hamid Mousavi, let me bring you in here. What does this agreement's success depend on?
So, as a thought, if the U.S. really wanted to help prevent Iran from getting into, honestly, nuclear power. And to make the case that, they're not doing it for nuclear weapons, that if they wanted to set up their policy and their trade policy with Iran, they could set it up to be a strong driver for sustainable energy. Well, just because we don't want you to have nuclear weapons or nuclear reactors, we're going to help you do geothermal, right? We're going to help you do tidal and solar and wind. We're going to help you build your infrastructure using sustainable energy so this doesn't become a thing. I mean, here everybody wins. It's on climate change, it's preventing, the dangers of nuclear power itself and the dangers of nuclear weapons, and it's trade. Everyone wins by taking that approach.
We don't know much, except that it's about $400 billion.
But of course, the U.S. doesn't actually want to solve the problem. They need to have an enemy in order to maintain the military-industrial complex and war and keep people afraid. Because if we solve the problems, then people are less afraid, then they're not as easy to control.
It's going to be spent over the next 25 years in the agreement includes the paving of roads, construction of ports, communications, as well as military cooperation. What do you make of the scant details that we know of it?
Right. So it was actually the Chinese who asked for the details to remain confidential. The speaker of Iran's government made clear that from the Iranian perspective, there was nothing secret about it. But from what we've heard from Iranian officials, the deal promises $400 billion of Chinese investment in Iranian infrastructure. And this is supposed to happen in 25 years. Whether that will happen or not, we will have to wait and see. In return, China will get a steady stream of discounted Iranian oil. And I mean, even before this agreement, the Chinese are buying increasing amount of Iranian oil. Right now, they're buying almost 1 million barrels per day of oil. And this is in defiance of U.S. sanctions. So this is very good for Iran. Also, we're hearing that there's a lot of promises regarding defense and security cooperation between the two countries. And I think this is something very significant. Iran and China have a very deep economic relationship, almost to $20 billion per year of trade already. But in regards to defense and security cooperation, that has never happened before on a serious level.
All right, man. Have a good night.
If that actually
thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it.
Then I think that is a big problem for the Americans, because that will make the Chinese more involved in the Middle East, and the Americans will have a potential powerful rival in the Middle East. As we saw, for example, in Syria, when the Russians entered the war, it really tipped the balance of power in that war. And I think China becoming more involved in the Middle East will be very bad for the Americans,
yes,
and potentially good for the Iranians.
What about the nuclear deal, Hanauer? Could Beijing be positioning itself to play a more central role when it comes to perhaps reviving the nuclear deal that the U.S. had pulled out of? And we know that China does support Iran.
Well, it supports the JCPOA. It is not supporting any kind of military alliance. I think that is a fallacy, and I am surprised that that's being pushed by my colleague in Iran. What they have said is there's a possible path to joining the SCO, but that's to combat terrorism, not to set up a defensive bloc. China has not entered into any kind of defense or agreements with any other countries. And there's good reason for that. They're not looking for a confrontation. So at this point, yes, China would be very interested in having the JCPOA put back in place. The difficulty that you have here is that Iran does not want to give any concessions other than going back to the basics. They're very suspicious of the U.S. and the U.S. Similarly.
Fair.
So right now, there's a huge trust deficit. I don't know that China will be able to mend that. But if there were a three-party, way of making sure that Iran sovereignty was respected, that might help move things along. But that would not be unilateral. That would have to be a guarantee by all the major powers.
Teresa, to what extent does this deal between Iran and China perhaps undercut Washington's efforts to keep Iran isolated?
Well, I think that China has had a really good ride in the Middle East because they've diversified their energy resources. And so they receive oil from all players in the region, which is a smart strategy. And they've never been asked to choose sides. And as we know in the Middle East, it's very difficult to do that. And as China intensifies its relations with Iran with this deal, I mean, they even have a technological cooperation with Israel, which might be jeopardized. And, you know, they're trying to balance Saudi interests, Iranian interests. And so far, they've been able to do that, saying, we're only interested in business. We don't want to get involved in any religious issues.
That's smart.
But because of what's happening in Xinjiang, it might push the envelope a bit. So how can China continue to say we're only doing business and have no other role in the region will remain to be seen. I think the JCPOA, of course, was not a perfect agreement, but it was the best that could be agreed upon. And I really do hope that there will be some revitalization of that. The new Biden administration has said that they're quite interested in returning to it, but there are many obstacles to that.
Right,
and I
but
think
as we see, Iran is moving closer to China. Iran is moving closer to China with this deal. So that hope, could it fade? Is there any space left for issues to be resolved when it comes to the JCPOA?
Well, I think that Iran should be cautious because look what happened to Russia. If you only turn towards China, that gives them so much more leverage over you. So I think a wise strategy for Iran would be multiple partners, and not to just push themselves into a corner as what happened with Russia, because that gives Beijing far more leverage over them. And I think that a far smarter strategy would be to return to the JCPOA and at least have investment from other players, including Europe. And I think that would be a key strategy. I think, linking their cart only to the Chinese horse would be detrimental to their future.
Okay, I mean, Iran says that it is the United States that pulled out of the JCPOA, but Hamed Mousavi, I'll bring you in here because there is some reporting out of the U.S. That seems to suggest that the Biden administration is planning to put forward a new proposal to jumpstart those talks, perhaps even this week, and that may include a request that Iran halt some of its nuclear activities in exchange for some relief from U.S. sanctions. At this stage, and after signing this deal with China, is that something that Iran would accept, Hamid?
I think Iran still wants the JCPOA to work. Nevertheless, this agreement will make Iran less pressure to come back to the deal. But here's the issue regarding the JCPOA. The Biden administration has made clear that they want to renegotiate the deal. They want a so-called better deal. And when they say better, it means better for the Americans and more concessions from Iran. And Iran's position is that we are not going to renegotiate any part of the deal. I mean, the JCPOA was the result of several years of diplomacy. And just because the Americans withdrew doesn't mean that they can renegotiate it. The issue of trying to jumpstart it this week is that they are saying to Iran to stop enriching up to 20%, and in return, they will lift some sanctions. They haven't made clear which sanctions exactly. But from the Iranian perspective, that's a non-starter because Iran wants America to come back to the deal wholly. So they don't want just some sanctions to be lifted. They want all sanctions to be lifted. And in return, Iran will also fully oblige by its side of the deal. Nevertheless, the Biden administration has not been willing to do that thus far. This agreement with China is actually showing the Americans that Iran has other options. And I think this is something positive for Iran. And just to go back on the issue of military cooperation, when we say military cooperation, Iran's position is not a so-called defense pact with China, and Iran does not expect to go into war with the United States. I don't think anybody wants that. Nevertheless, I think in the long run, Iran can become closer to the Chinese, especially since they can't buy military equipment from most countries. They have no choice other than to rely on the Russian and on the Chinese regarding its military.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Thanks to my guest, Einar Tangen.
Okay, well, I guess we watched the whole thing. That was good to hear. I hadn't heard much about it, so this is a nice basic education on what's going on over there. Yeah, this is like they're saying, it's going to turn out much better for Iran and what's happening with them, and reduces the leverage that the U.S. has over them. So I guess we'll see how that plays out. Yeah, the U.S. should just agree to implement or to re-sign the whatever the current agreement is, and then once they get that done and enforced and sanctions lifted and all that sort of stuff, then they can work on renegotiating or setting up another deal that builds upon what's already been done. Okay. Any thoughts on that? All right. This is from a few days ago. And vacant houses to be renovated for people experiencing homelessness in Kansas City. Kansas City, Kansas. The Land Bank is seeking organizations to rehabilitate vacant properties and offer them to people who are unhoused or at risk of becoming homeless. This is amazing. I really like this concept. We'll get into this a little bit more. I actually didn't save this properly. I need to. All right, well. For as long as they can remember, neighbors say the boarded-up house on the 3200 block of Bellefontaine Avenue has sat empty. Laura Belt considered buying it until she looked inside. There was like vines and trees growing up through the middle. I honestly don't remember if we went to the second floor because I thought this is not going to be a house for us. It just seemed like it was going to take a lot of work to move into. I think this video here goes through it. Let's go ahead and go through this. Stop moving, god damn it. Yeah, this is not good. This is bad usability. No, don't do this. All right, here we go. Oh, did I think I muted this. Yes, I did.
Empty. Laura considered buying it until she looked inside.
And there was like vines and trees like growing. I mean, this is 12 years ago, like growing up through the middle. And I honestly don't remember if we even went to the second floor. But yeah, because we just were like, oh no, this is not going to be a house for us. Like it just seemed like it was going to take like a lot of work to move into.
The roof is busted, floor caved in, market value $35,000.
Yikes.
Land Bank plans to sell it for $1.
This is one of the 100+ homes that the city of Kansas City owns right now that we are seeking to transform from these vacant, abandoned, blighted structures to homes for those most in need in our city, for the homeless.
That's awesome.
For people at the lowest incomes.
The city manager says they'll pick partners committed to that mission, not to people who just want to take advantage of a deal.
We're going to do what we can to make sure that these stay in the right hands.
Deserted for so many years, neighbors are curious to see if the house could be a home again.
I just feel like this is a forgotten area of the city, and it would be nice to have like people investing, not to like make profit off us, but invest because like that's the right thing to do for people and for this neighborhood.
Bianca Beltran, KMBC 9 News.
All right, there's that. This again, because it's going to keep playing and it's super annoying. The house is still busted with still vacant with a busted roof and the floor caved in. Its market value, according to the Jackson County Property Records, is over $35,000. The Land Bank of Kansas City plans to sell it for $1. This is one of the 100+ homes that the city of Kansas City owns right now that we are seeking to transform from the vacant, abandoned, blighted structures to homes for those most in need in the city, says City Manager Brian Platt. The Land Bank is issuing a request for proposals seeking organizations to rehabilitate the properties and offer them to families and individuals who are unhoused or at risk of becoming homeless. Platt says they plan to pick partners committed to that mission, not to people looking to take advantage of the deal. We're going to do what we can to make sure that these stay in the right hands. Yeah, and that's cool. And that's going to be probably a little difficult to do, but they persist and keep going with it. This could be an amazing, amazing project. Platt said reports indicated that there are approximately 1,500 unhoused people in the area, and the city needs up to 15,000 new affordable housing units. This is a great opportunity. It's going to make a big impact in dozens and hundreds of people's lives, but we still have a long ways to go. Belt ended up buying a house down the street for $20,000 and said she invested over $50,000 in fixing it up. Her neighbor across the street had a similar story, renovating this fixer-upper home about 6 years ago. They say they are curious to see if the house can be salvaged and how they will decide who would move in. Yeah, in our town, we're a small town. Kansas City is a hell of a lot bigger than we are, I'm fairly sure. We have 12,000 people. When we were looking for houses, we had houses that were selling for $120,000, $130,000, and it required $50,000, $60,000 of work just to be able to move in. It was ridiculous how expensive houses are here, especially with that amount of work. So it's really offensive. I think that's great if it's going to be for people who need housing, and if they're going to be able to help them be able to renovate, said Belt. I hate for it to be like, pay me $1 and then we're done. I would hope that they would support them with the process of getting loans and rehabbing it, said Belt. The land bank properties are located in 3rd, 4th, and 5th council districts. The vacant Bellefontaine house is located in the zip code with the lowest life expectancy in Kansas City. Okay, so zip code, so that most likely means it's definitely a much poorer part of the city. Therefore, because the life expectancy tends to be proportional to the level of inequality in the area. So low life expectancy, therefore high levels of inequality there. High levels of poverty. Belt says she worries about gentrification, but would like to see investment in the community. I just feel like this is a forgotten area of the city, and it would be nice to have people investing, not to make profit off us, but invest because that's the right thing to do for people and for this neighborhood. There will be an informational meeting Thursday at 6 p.m. at Neighborhoods and Housing Services. In-person seating will be limited. The meeting will also be available virtually. For information, visit KCMOL Land Bank. So, interesting concept. I wonder how well this would merge with something that Bernie Sanders had put together. The what was it, land grants? What did Bernie Sanders do? Land trusts. Land trust. There we go. If you take something like this, you start with, well, you could create a land trust, and the land trust could buy the property and then rehab it, and then rent it out or sell it. I think that's probably a very good combination here. Interesting. All right, where are we going to? All right, here we go. Questions, comments, thoughts on that? I think after this we have a lot of COVID stuff. Yeah, we got COVID stuff after all this. Because a lot of people don't know how to renovate. Yeah, no, exactly. I absolutely have zero skills for that. And it's, it'll create, so if you have a land trust and they buy these houses and then they renovate them, that creates a considerable amount of business for contractors in the area, especially those who, maybe as a part of the local tax policy, those contractors that help out with this they could give them sort of a tax break or some sort of tax or grant incentive to work towards doing that. Take a while if they were left to do that. Yeah, it takes a long time to do that unless you have a lot of money and a lot of manpower to get it done. It's pretty incredible how much work could be done when you have the right people with the right tools. You could easily get a house done in a few months. And if you have an entire mass of people willing to work on this, you get several houses done in a summer, and it would be pretty amazing. and that will get the people into the homes fairly quickly, which is the goal. Yeah, exactly. And then if you do it, like from what I remember from the land trust thing that Bernie Sanders put together, it's when you the land trust always owns the property, and when you go to sell it, sell your partial ownership or whatever, that there are limits to how much you can sell it for, based on math or whatever, and that would be a way to do it, right? You spend what you can to get the land trust to get it remodeled, and then maybe the first people who get in there, they're able to get in for fairly cheap, either renting it or buying it fairly cheap, so that when they go to sell it or have someone go to sell it, they make some a bit of money off that, which would be good for the inherited or intergenerational wealth thing or something like that. Yes, they put restriction on title. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'd be amazing. All right. And something like that, that could also be done for something like a large commercial area that was like a large commercial building that has been abandoned. You take that into a land trust, and then you turn that into like a homeless shelter rehabilitation place that has like capsule houses, small, maybe like a hostel living sort of a thing, so that people can quickly find a place to live. And you've got job and addiction counseling and housing and all sorts of things to get that started. So you could do that. Healthcare as well, right? So yeah, they could do that not just with houses, but with larger commercial areas and turning into much larger help for those who are in need. All right. How 10 billion people could live well by 2050 using as much energy as we did 60 years ago. All right, so now we're getting into sustainability and efficiency sort of things. Ooh, what is this? Forced contraception in exchange for aid is the solution. Okay, that I don't like. The problem is that there are too many of us. That is incorrect. COVID-19 is nature's way of dealing with the situation. That is also incorrect. Okay, so I have a feeling I'm not going to like this article. Now, we've been over this exact thing, right? I have this article that I've been started working on. The issue isn't, okay, I'm gonna have to rip this article apart here. I can feel it coming. Okay, forced contraception isn't the problem. Inequality and poverty is. Again, we look at the demographic transitions, the more inequality and poverty and suffering there is and lack of education, the higher the number of children. So if you want to deal with the birth rate, you shift these areas into first world status, education, healthcare, jobs, housing, sanitation, and then boom, the rate of children being born drops substantially. It's not that there are too many of us, it's that we have capitalism, COVID's 19 ways. Okay, this, no, not that either. These comments are among those popular responses recently published in The Sun in response to an article by the broadcaster David Attenborough. Okay. On the climate crisis. But don't be fooled into thinking the same scapegoating can't be found below the line in more progressive newspapers such as The Guardian, even if the racism is less explicit. Yeah, it's... Okay, all right, so maybe this isn't going to be so bad. A larger population does make it harder to treat the environment in the right way, but there's no quick fix, even as the most conservative projections suggest a global population of over 8 billion by 2050. Yeah, and they say by 2100 we'll reach a peak of what, 9 point something billion, but by 2065 it'll be 9 something billion, and then by 2100 it'll go down to 8 billion, or is it 7 billion or something like that? It'll go back down. Fortunately, in new research, we found that using 60% less energy than today, decent living standards could be provided to a global population of 10 billion by 2050. That's 75% less energy than the world's current forecast to consume by 2050 on our present trajectory, or as much energy as the world used in the 1960s. Okay, so this is how much each is using. Okay, gas is giant, oil, coal, traditional biomass, yep. Then renewable, where the fuck is renewables? Renewables is, okay, it's right over here. It's a small sliver. Okay, so it's a blue area right here. Yeah, that's gotta change. This fucking, where's this oil? Coal, this needs to be geothermal. Oil, turn oil into geothermal and tidal. Boom. Jimmy Baker, how you doing? Welcome, welcome. Ooh, a message came over from YouTube. Nice. How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Yeah, we're covering some an article here on energy and population growth. Global North countries like the US and Australia currently consume the most energy per person. This could be slashed by 90% while still guaranteeing decent living standards for all. And the remaining energy requirement could likely come from clean renewable sources. So how might this all be possible? The Good Life. I'm curious to see what they have to say here. Achieving such a world requires radical action on all fronts, including the mass rollout of the best technologies available, the most energy efficient buildings, vehicles, appliances, and lighting systems, along with the most advanced facilities to produce and recycle all the necessary materials. Sounds like my policies, right? Tear down the old cities, build brand new cities that are, sustainable energy, sustainable food, energy efficient. Yeah, I agree with that completely. Although it needs to be done faster than 2050. It also requires drastically reducing how much energy and resources some people consume. There's no longer room for second homes, second cars, 20-minute power showers in the second bathroom, biannual upgrades of electronic gadgets, new shoes for every season, or plates piled high with red meat 7 nights a week. Yeah, exactly. I agree. Again, if you look at what you can do, water recycling to help solve this problem, right? Making your electronic gadgets universal and using universal and modular design, so that if you want to increase your processor, you just switch out the processor instead of having to do the whole frickin' thing. That is a design issue that we can work on. We need to rein in. How you doing, Kitchen Sink? Welcome, welcome. How you doing today? How's your defending of that kitchen sink going? Yeah, we're looking at energy and population growth. How can we reduce energy requirements with an increasing population? We need to rein in the excessive consumption levels of the affluent to raise the living conditions of 3.5 billion living on less than US $5.50 a day. In other words, we need to flatten global national inequalities. My policy is completely. In our study, we allowed for inequalities in energy consumption to persist only where need dictates. In especially cold or hot climates where energy is needed for heating and cooling, in sparsely populated countries, people need to travel more to meet their needs. Makes sense. No one is getting to this sink. They can take anything else, but the sink is mine. Okay. Yeah, that sink's kind of important. I'm glad you're defending that sink. That's important. But what do we mean by decent living? The notion we use is a far cry from that defined by consumer culture, but it's a long way from anything resembling poverty. There be adequately sized housing that maintains a comfortable temperature year-round with clean, running hot water, washing machine, fridge, freezer, laptops, and smartphones in every home. Sign me up. Enough hospitals and schools to guarantee universal access, and 3 times as much public transport per person as is currently provided in the world's wealthier countries. Clearly, when people argue that environmentalists want a return to us living in caves, this isn't what they have in mind. That, or they're imagining rather luxurious caves. The major reductions in consumption necessary don't present barriers to anyone achieving a high standard of living. Correct. As a matter of fact, if you do it the way kind of I talk about it, it'll give people a much higher standard of living than we've ever had before. by like a large margin, especially for, over 50% of the population of the earth. Solving the ecological crisis doesn't have to be the attack on modern living that many fear, but it does represent an attack on modern life in many ways. This vision can't be reconciled with a system that requires permanent growth in economic output to maintain employment levels, or one that incentivizes shifting factories to places where rampant ecological destruction is inevitable and wages are barely sufficient for basic subsistence. And that's the sort of stuff that my policies talk about, right? To an extent. Yes, this disease of infinite growth and infinite consumption has to stop, and that's a large part of the problem we have here. Again, setting economic policies so that it rewards people for being environmentally friendly and for being sustainable and that sort of thing. And that goes into the regenerative, open source, circular economy approach that we need to do. The New World. Ecological breakdown isn't the only 21st century challenge that capitalism seems ill-equipped to face. Fears abound that artificial intelligence and automation will bring mass unemployment. It will. Spiraling inequalities. It will. Even ecological cast of superhumans. Oh, that it could, definitely. A world of decent living standards using minimal energy requires flattening global inequalities, but these developments promise to push us precisely the other way. Yeah, and that has to do with, again, capitalism with infinite consumption and infinite production. It just can't happen that way. And I talked about that before, right? If we actually engage in these sorts of policies that they're talking about, that I talk about, eventually what will happen is you start raising countries up from second and third world status to first world status, and that automatically reduces the population because, like, the United States and France and a few other countries are facing a population decline. And then you increase efficiencies, you increase modularity, you make sure you increase the required lifetime for products so that they last longer, so that people are buying less. Then what you'll see is capitalism collapsing because people aren't buying as many things, which violates the infinite consumption, right, and infinite production. And we got fewer people, so that, creating the world the way that it needs to be to save humanity from extinction will automatically have capitalism implode. Like it or not, change is coming. We may see the entirety of Uber replaced by self-driving vehicles and robotic factories producing an abundance of synthetic meat. Even large fractions of healthcare and legal work are likely to be outsourced to algorithms fed by torrents of globally sourced data. All this alongside a rapidly aging population requiring increasing amounts of care. And some of this could be reduced as well by, ensuring people have access to healthcare, and that part of healthcare is people having time to work out and take care of themselves and have free gym memberships, free massage, free acupuncture, and that sort of a thing. If they have access to, and dietitians, nutritionists, right, as being an integral part of taking care of oneself, that can radically change things. Increasing taxes on bad food, right, sin tax and that sort of thing, while greatly reducing the cost of, foods that people should be eating. Whole foods and organic and that sort of a thing. Can business as usual cope? Nope. In an increasingly automated future, no work means no wages. Who will buy all the stuff automated factories produce? Exactly. And this is, and I didn't even touch upon that, right? With the increase in automation, the upcoming AI and automation apocalypse means we're going to have masses of unemployment. So again, that'll be another way that capitalism is going to end up imploding as well. May seem unthinkable, but increasing economic activity enough to keep a world of 10 billion employed 9 to 5 alongside all that automated production would mean the planet would almost certainly be toast. In a new world of intelligent machines doing much of the work, looming environmental limits, and an increasing fraction of the population too old to work, wages and money may cease to make sense. Yes, true statement. That's what my policies are pretty much aiming at. And then a fraction of the population too old to work. This should not ever be something that we should ever have to say. People should not have to be working until they die. That is fucking horrific. I mean, horrific. This shouldn't be a thing. And this is one of those diseases of capitalism. You are not working and cannot be exploited, then you are worth nothing to the system. Therefore, you can just go ahead and fucking die in the streets. That's capitalism at its finest, right? And that's something that we can't be fixed, cannot be fixed, because it is a value intrinsic or visceral to capitalism. It cannot be fixed, honestly, until we get out of capitalism. We need to totally rethink our system of ownership and distribution. And why not? The technologies underpinning automation are an outcome of hundreds of years of human ingenuity. Yep, this is important. Why should the benefits be captured by a minority of super rich owners? Exactly. So they're really kind of pointing to some very to some of the things that I talk about, as you guys can tell. And exactly, the Elon Musk and Tesla, right, and Richard Branson, right, Bill Gates, all these quote brilliant people. They didn't just magically become brilliant. Everything that they have done is built upon everything that came before them. They, like Sagan says, they stand upon the shoulders of giants that came before them, right? Universal basic services, including the public provisioning of housing, healthcare, education, and transport, among other things. This are what my policies talk about, may be needed to meet the basic needs of everyone. This could provide the basis for decent living in a world with less work, allowing people the time to undertake all the unpaid care work required to support children, the mentally ill, and increasingly the elderly. Now, I haven't fully implemented universal basic services in my policies because I don't have the housing aspect dealt with, and this has been, for me, the most difficult thing to figure out. And also the transport thing. I kind of include it in there, but it's not, I don't have it in there quite as universal basic services for transport. It's much like housing. It's not as easy to fix unless you start, like I recommend, start from the ground up and build brand new cities from the ground up with mass transportation, universal housing, education, energy, food, and all that sort of stuff. Then if you don't start that way, then it's hard to include all these things. And you can't, it's hard to build the world of tomorrow on the infrastructure of yesterday. And that's, I say that all the time, right? We're a long way from utopian visions of luxury for all, but providing decent living standards to all is already technologically possible. True statement. Like I say, we have the knowledge, we have the technology, we have the resources to make everything amazing. It's just capitalism and profit is what is standing in the way. The alternative is ecological catastrophe and social breakdown. Aspiring to such a world seems not only desirable, but essential. Yes, true statement. True statement. What are they going to point to? Open democracy. What are they pointing to? Yeah, okay, so this is, I read this book. It's a decent book, but it's a lot shorter than I was expecting. It's like 110, 120 pages or something like that. And I was looking for lots of heavy policy talk about what we can do. It's more of just kind of an exploration of what they are and what it kind of might mean, but they don't get too heavy into this as I would like. I read this in one day, but it needs to be more. I need more. Fully automated luxury communism book review. Okay. Yeah. So not doing that, but resource-based economies, that is obviously what I point to, what I talk about here, right? All right. Any questions, comments, thoughts on that? Anybody? 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 Just working listing? Okay, that's cool. So now we're getting into the fun stuff. We've got some COVID stuff. Got through all the non-COVID stuff because we hit all the crap load of COVID stuff yesterday. Not that. What have I done? So now we're going to hit some COVID stuff now. All right, so this is from this week, right? Pretty sure. Yeah, March 8th. This is from today, actually. Dozens in Central Florida contract COVID-19 after being fully vaccinated. So-called breakthrough cases pop up in Orlando. Case, right? Fucking Florida. Oh my God. They're called COVID-19 breakthrough cases. People who have been fully vaccinated yet still contract the virus more than 14 days after their second shot. Now, this, I think, is a little bit misleading for the article. I've read, I think, most of this. But from what I remember from those videos that we've watched, right? Oh, I didn't update this. Hold on. Yeah, it takes like a month for your immune system to 3 to 4 weeks before your immune system really catches up with the next shot, or with either shot. So 2 weeks might be a bit early. All right, the cases are popping up. 2 weeks might be a bit early before you've got your, both parts of your immune system up and ready to go, and before people use this to push off anti-vax narratives. We haven't had anyone do that here, actually, fortunately. I don't think I've had to block anyone for anti-vax stuff yet. It's mostly racism that I block people for. So yeah, that would be a first. So maybe that because you said it, you've just summoned one of them here. It'll be your fault. We'll see. The cases are popping up around the country, including in Central Florida. Hannah Roberts, 27, is a physical therapist and has been tested for COVID-19 at least once a week since the pandemic started. So exactly, self-fulfilling prophecy. You did this to me. She says she got her first positive test just days ago. I was shocked, Rewerts told News 6 immediately. I'm like, this has to be a false positive. This can't be right. But multiple tests confirmed it. She said she was shocked because she is also fully vaccinated. Okay, so it must be understood that the vaccine isn't here to prevent you from getting sick. I mean, it is. That's part of its function, but it's not. That's not its primary goal. It's helping to obviously supercharge your immune system so that if you do get sick, that your body is much more capable of fighting it. The primary goal of these vaccines, as those videos talked about, was that if you do get sick, hopefully it'll help prevent that. But if you do get sick, that you won't end up dead or have any of the other more serious side effects, right? Death, brain damage, heart damage, lung damage, long-term COVID, tinnitus, your face being messed up, right? Or also so that you don't end up in ICU, is to basically to reduce the potential effects of COVID so that, you don't have to be hospitalized or anything beyond that. People seem to think that these vaccines are going to be fucking magic and life can go back to normal, and that's not the fucking case. As a healthcare worker, Rewerts had her first dose of the Pfizer vaccine in December 2020, according to her vaccine card. Her second dose was 3 weeks later in January. More than 2 months after the second shot, she contracted the virus. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. So up above it says 14 days, but here it says 2 months. So that is important. Yeah. We've gone over those videos here, and that's my understanding too. And that's unfortunately, something that the public needs to understand, because people think that if you get the vaccine, everything is going to be like you're immune, you're invulnerable. I mean, I don't know how the intricacies of vaccines, but they won't stop you from getting a pathogen, just make you. Yeah, exactly. We went over a few videos on that. If you go to Discord, I've got the ongoing tragedies section, and I've got COVID-19 and some videos talk about that. Exactly. And that's going to require a public education thing to make sure people understand that, and that's going to be difficult because people want life to go back to normal. I mean, I want life to go back to normal too. Believe me, I do. It's bad. I mean, it's not just bad for me. It's bad for everyone. Just the psychological harm caused to people because we're a social species and we can't do that. So it's just bad. But we need to not be stupid. But humans are prone to being stupid when it's convenient. Biology, I don't know about the U.S., but I imagine the same. It could be, but I don't remember anything about vaccines beyond, you get them and I didn't get polio, so I think they work, right? Okay. So it's very odd, Rewerts said. Rewerts is among a growing number of people. Earlier this month, the Minnesota Department of Health released a health advisory stating that, along with the CDC, it is investigating COVID-19 infections among people who are appropriately vaccinated, also called vaccine breakthrough cases, according to the advisory. News 6 checked, and the Florida Department of Health in Volusia County has 6 documented breakthrough cases, while Sumter County has 6 and Lake County has 26 cases, according to the emails from each county's spokesperson. Dr. Timothy Hendricks is with Advent Health and said it is possible for someone who's fully vaccinated to still contract the virus. Yeah, and that's when we're watching those videos. I don't remember. So the efficacy number is not about whether or not you get it. It's whether or not you go to the hospital or have something worse happen, right? It's not about whether the efficacy number is not about whether or not you get sick. I would like to see those numbers for these vaccines. You know, these people who are out there, how many got sick from it after the vaccine? I think that is kind of an important number, but I haven't seen any of that number in the videos or anything else that I've seen. However, the vaccine can prevent more severe cases, including hospitalization and death. It is still important to get vaccinated from COVID-19. It is possible because no vaccine is perfect. It is possible to get sick again, right? Because no vaccine is perfect, Hendricks said. Honestly, the most important number should be how many people you can spread to it. Oh, okay, that's fair. Yeah, that whatever that ratio number is. Yeah, it's like 1 point whatever. Yeah, that's fair. Well, both of those would be very good. If how many get sick, right? If significantly fewer people actually get sick, that is huge. Then yes, how many do these people who are sick? How many people do they actually infect afterwards? Yeah, exactly. Those are the two numbers I would prefer to see. Actually, all three of them. I would like to see all three of those. How many can get infected? How many people are infected by you? And then what is the efficacy rate that they normally give you? Wow. Hendricks stressed that both Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are 95% effective. Again, it's that number. It's not. Does it mean what it is you think it means? The good news is for that very small amount of people that might become infected, that less than 5%, the chances of severe disease is next to zero. Yeah, hopefully that's the way it is. Now, of course, as we've seen through some of these videos, that we don't know how well they work against the other variants, and that's kind of important. They haven't been tested against those. At least like Moderna and Pfizer were tested in the same period, and they didn't have access to the any of the variants. But Johnson & Johnson was tested in a different period, and it was tested in India or South Africa, and they did have access to at least one of the regional variants. So, have you heard about the blood clots? Yes, kitchen sink. That's not enough educating Americans about this. Yeah, there's not enough educating Americans. Yes, because we're so fucking broken in the head. Yeah, they need to be much more active on this. I mean, it needs to be everywhere all the time so people understand the truth about this. Yeah, it definitely need that. Yeah, we covered the AstraZeneca thing on the blood clots. Germany found the one article we had said they found out the trigger for it, but they also found out that it can be dealt with by just a simple, whatever. The article was poor journalism. It didn't tell us what the trigger was, and it didn't tell us what the sorts of medication are that would deal with it. But they figured it out, and it can be dealt with fairly quickly. So if you get some of the symptoms, then you just tell the doctor, and then they give you the whatever medication it is, and then you should be okay. Yeah, that was a big deal. That made me really, really twitchy about the AstraZeneca thing throughout Europe. Really twitchy. Breakthrough cases are not specific to COVID-19 and can happen with any vaccine, according to experts. Rewerts said 3 of her family members who were also fully vaccinated contracted it as well because you weren't fucking doing this stuff. Everybody's thinking that they won't catch COVID now. Right, right. And they need to understand that if you get vaccinated, you can still get it. And you can still transmit it. And that's the other thing. Yeah. That's what Kitchen Sink was saying. That's the other piece of information I would like. If you are vaccinated, yep, and how much can you transmit it to others? That is a super key information, a piece of data to know. Yeah, and they need to reinforce that, yes, life is not going back to normal until we get to the point where this is basically gone, which is, again, going to take several years. Well, it's going to take a while. I don't know when. If we get most everyone vaccinated, and again, this might be something that we require yearly vaccines to prevent. Now, I've never actually really gotten the flu vaccine. I hate needles. But with COVID, I'd probably I will end up going probably yearly to get the vaccine if that's what it ends up being. That's probably what's going to end up being, because we already have like 4 or 5 different variants. If we can get vaccines made quickly enough and powerful enough to prevent people from getting sick from it, that'll be huge to keep it under control. But we'll see. For this next year or two, we'll see how that works. Yeah, so Reward said 3 of her family members who were also fully vaccinated contracted it as well. Well, she was probably the point of infection because she works in healthcare, and she gave it to the rest of her family members because they weren't social distancing, weren't wearing masks, weren't doing what they were supposed to, most likely. One of my family members actually went to the hospital, Reward said. I mean, that's pretty severe enough to be concerned about the vaccine. Oh, that's interesting. Reward said the Florida Department of Health is testing to see whether she may have been infected by one of the COVID variants that has made it to Florida. Okay, so yeah, that's the other question. If they did get infected, what variant did they get? Was it the base variant, or what was the base version of COVID, or was it one of the variants? That's super important to know, and that's not something they talk about here. So yeah, if they got sick again, it might have been one of the variants. So the current vaccine may not be that effective against them. Of course, Florida is a cesspool for, well, everything, because they're controlled by Republicans. So for now, she and her family will continue social distancing and wearing masks. Good. I don't think the public is aware that it doesn't mean you're not getting the virus, and it doesn't mean you're not getting sick. There's still a chance, Reward said. Hendricks put it this way: the one thing you should know is that every vaccine that's been approved at this point is highly effective at preventing the one major endpoint, hospitalization and death, Hendricks said, which is what those videos that we've seen has said, right? Researchers are still trying to figure out if the people who are vaccinated and contract the virus can also spread to other people, which is why they recommend still wearing a mask even after you're vaccinated. Yep, exactly. Yeah, they do. Epidemiologists have their work cut out for them. Exactly right. And if they really want to defeat this quickly, it's going to take a lot of concerted effort to figure out these the variants and to get their vaccines updated to include the variants to help put an end to those. Yeah, it's huge. It's important for everyone to understand. Because you've been vaccinated, it's not magic. Life doesn't go back to normal. You still have to be safe. Alrighty. Lots of COVID joy going around here. All right, mutations could render current COVID vaccines ineffective in a year or less, epidemiologists warn, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about here, that they have to get super busy, find these variants, and start adjusting their vaccines so that it can include the mutations, the variants on here, if you want to get this under control. Mutations of the coronavirus could render current vaccines ineffective within a year, according to a majority of epidemiologists, virologists, and infectious disease specialists surveyed by the People's Vaccine Alliance. Yeah, that's what I was saying. New yearly vaccine. Then that's kind of what I'm expecting. For probably the next 5 years at least, if we don't defeat it. I mean, we haven't been able to defeat the flu, right? So I expect this is going to be one of those. It's going to end up being a yearly vaccine because the longer it takes for us to put an end to it, the more variants are going to come out, and the longer we're going to need vaccines for all the other variants. And honestly, the pharmaceutical industries don't want to defeat it because if they can keep the disease going, they can keep making billions of dollars, right? Billions and billions of dollars on all of these vaccines. It's better for them if we don't defeat it. Again, that's one of the issues with having vaccines created by and paid for by pharmaceutical industries who profit off it. On the list for at-risk patients for flu, 0 DUI. GP has 0 DUI, so I get offered the flu vaccine each year anyway. They don't know why you're on the list? That's strange. Do you get it every year? I know Bad Bunny, she is, she was trained as an epidemiologist getting her master's and something like that. She gets livid at people who don't get the at the vaccine, which I get from her. I get. I just haven't gotten it. I hate needles. I suppose if I end up having to get the COVID vaccine every year, I'll probably get the flu one too, just to, I'm there. You're gonna stab me anyhow, so just fucking stab me twice. Not fun. Mutations of the coronavirus could blah, blah, blah. The survey of 70. I know I've asked them loads. I get it when I can, but I don't live near my. Oh, GP, general practitioner. How are you that far away from your doctor? Do you live in the middle of BFE? Like the middle of nowhere? Like 4 hours to the nearest major city? At Union Heaven. Ah, okay. Gotcha. Well, chop chop. Register. Well, surely they can. I mean, if you're at university, they should give you access to a doctor locally. I mean, that would be ridiculous to not have access to one locally. I mean, super ridiculous. So can you go see a doctor without? I don't even remember where you're from, but can you see a doctor locally without getting beat down with bills? If they sound European, I don't remember where you're from. You can do walk-ins, but you can't book. Oh, okay. That's messed up. Never pay. Okay, well that's good. All right, so you're just limited to access. Yeah, that sucks. That sucks. Well, it's something. At least it's free, and you can go see the doctor when you need to. At least that's important. Okay, well not horrible, but well, it's better than we are here, so I guess I can't complain at all, right? Well, hopefully you stay healthy. The survey of 77 experts from some of the world's leading academic institutions across 28 countries found that almost a third gave a time frame of 9 months or less. Fewer than 1 in 8 said they believed that mutations would never render the current vaccines ineffective. Yeah, okay. 2/3 thought that we had a year or less before the virus mutates, to the extent that the majority of first-generation vaccines are rendered ineffective and new or modified vaccines are required. Year or less. Yeah, okay, so I think we're actually at that point now because of, honestly, just because of the B117 variant that's hit, Britain. It's popped over here, and it's in Michigan, which is the state next door to where I'm at. Right? It's been, what, we read the article, it said that it was, the B117 variant is 56% more infectious and like 62% more deadly. And it's much more deadly, it affects children much more deeply. So it's here, and Oh, and it's also responsible for 50% of the increase, 50% of the new cases found in Michigan. And they've had a giant jump in cases in Michigan. So I fully expect and also Michigan has a high rate of vaccination as well. So I fully expect that we're already to that point just because of the B117 variant. I think the other two variants, I think the current vaccines will probably work okay with at least. But I think we're fairly screwed because of the B117. The vaccines won't work well against the B117 variant. Those are my thoughts. The survey published Tuesday was carried out by the People's Vaccine Alliance, a coalition of over 50 organizations, including African Alliance, Oxfam, UNAIDS, and that campaigns for equal global access to COVID vaccines. The overwhelming majority of the experts, 88%, said that persistent low vaccine coverage in many countries would make it more likely for resistant mutations to appear. The People's Vaccine Alliance warned that at the current rate of global vaccination programs, only 10% of the people in the majority of poor countries would likely be vaccinated in the next year. I don't want to derail, but out of curiosity, how much would you pay for a dentist? Just the standard. I think it's several $100s. I want to say 600, but I don't know. For a dentist cleaning cost. $250? Because we do pay here, but it's capped at $20. Rub it in. Rub it in, bastard. Average cost of a dental cleaning. Okay, $290 and $120. That's what they are saying here. This is 2016. Rub it in. Most dentists require a comprehensive. X-rays. I get X-rays every 6 months or something like that. Full mouth exam, impressions, and that can run anywhere from $50 to $400. Okay, so probably, like for what I get, I have the doctor look at me every single time I'm in, so it's probably, probably closer to $200 to $300. I have good insurance, so I don't pay anything when I go in, which is nice. Shots and boosters. A number of COVID vaccines have been developed, tested, and authorized for emergency use in the past year. 3 vaccines currently in use in the West from Moderna, Pfizer, BioNTech, AstraZeneca, and the University of Oxford are being made predominantly in the US, UK, or EU, while China and Russia have developed their own vaccines. Time is of the essence when it comes to life-saving immunization. The coronavirus pandemic has led to over 127 million COVID infections worldwide and over 2.7 million deaths. The US, Brazil, India, France, Russia, and the UK have been the hardest hit, according to the data from Johns Hopkins University. Now, it's really, Brazil and India, I understand, but we also have first world nations in here. I mean, that's ridiculous. Ridiculous. So much stupidity in policy. The spread of more infectious and in some cases potentially more deadly variants of the virus in the latter half of 2020 has made the race to vaccinate as many people as possible a highly charged event. Vaccine developers have already announced that they are developing booster shots to deal with the COVID variants. Okay, there we go. Good. That have become more dominant, particularly those first discovered in the UK, South Africa, and Brazil. Yeah, I think there's 4 variants, and these are the 3 most prolific, specifically with the UK one being the worst of them. Okay, booster shots. So that's what they're working on. That's cool. So they'll probably give the standard vaccine and then the booster to target some of the variants. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. All right. Do we want to go over this one? We don't want to go over this one. Okay, let's go to this one here. So we're kind of already talking about this concept with the previous article or so. We must start planning for a permanent pandemic with coronavirus mutations pitted against vaccinations in a global arms race. We may never go back to normal. Yeah, I know here, some people I've talked to, yeah, they're going to be a lot more cautious from now on. Like if they're sick or someone else is sick, they may end up, wearing masks or staying home more often than not, to protect themselves because we know what might be out there. And you never know what you are sick with. And this is from March 20. Okay, this last week. For the past year, an assumption, sometimes explicit, often tacit, has informed almost all of our thinking about the pandemic. At some point, it will be over and we'll go back to normal. This premise is almost certainly wrong. SARS-CoV-2, protean and elusive as it is, may become our permanent enemy, like the flu, but worse. And even if it peters out eventually, our lives and routines will then have been changed irreversibly. Going back won't be an option. The only way is forward, but to what exactly? Most epidemics disappear once populations achieve herd immunity, and the pathogen has too few vulnerable bodies available and as hosts for its self-propagation. This herd protection comes about through the combination of natural immunity in people who've recovered from the infection and vaccination of the remaining population. In the case of SARS-CoV-2, however, recent developments suggest that we may never achieve herd immunity. Even the US, which leads most other countries in vaccinations, has already had large outbreaks, won't get there. That's the upshot of an analysis by Christopher Murray at the University of Washington and Peter Pyatt at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. The main reason is the ongoing emergence of new variants that behaves almost like new viruses. A clinical vaccine trial in South Africa showed that people in the placebo group who had previously been infected with one strain had no immunity against its mutated descendant and became reinfected. There are similar reports from parts of Brazil that had massive outbreaks and subsequently suffered renewed epidemics. That leaves only vaccination as a path toward lasting herd immunity. And admittedly, some of the shots available today are still somewhat effective against some of the new variants. But over time, they will become powerless against the coming mutations. Of course, vaccine makers are already feverishly working on making new jabs, and particularly inoculations based on the revolutionary mRNA technology. I previously described it can be updated faster than any vaccine in history, but the serum still needs to be made, shipped, distributed, and jabbed. They forgot a step there. It needs to be made, tested, shipped, then distributed and jabbed, right? And that process can't happen fast enough, nor cover the planet widely enough. Yet some of us may win a regional round or two against the virus by vaccinating one particular population, as Israel has done, for instance. But evolution doesn't care when it does its work, and the virus replicates wherever it finds warm and unvaccinated bodies with cells that let it reproduce its RNA. As it copies itself, it makes the occasional coding mistakes, and some of those chance errors turn into yet more mutations. These viral avatars are popping up wherever there's lots of transmission going on and somebody bothers to look closely. A British, a South African, and at least one Brazilian strain have already become notorious, but I've also seen reports of viral cousins and nephews showing up in California, Oregon, and elsewhere. If we were to sequence samples in more places, we'd probably find even more relatives. We should therefore assume that the virus is already mutating fast, and in the many poor countries that have so far received no jabs at all, even if their youthful populations keep mortality manageable and thus mask the severity of local outbreaks. Last month, Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, reminded the world that 75% of all shots had been administered in just 10 countries, while 130 others hadn't primed a single syringe. So this makes the case to make all the vaccines as open source so that every country has free access to make them themselves. If we truly, truly want to defeat this, that is what needs to be done. Pathogens' evolution is neither surprising nor automatically worrisome. One frequent pattern is that bugs over time become more contagious but less virulent. After all, not killing your host too efficiently confers an advantage in natural selection. If SARS-CoV-2 goes this route, it'll eventually just become another common cold. But that's not what it's been doing recently. The variants we know of have become more infectious, but no less lethal. From an epidemiological point of view, that's the worst news. Yeah, and that's what the B117 variant is, right? It's like 50-some% more infectious and 60-some% more deadly. Deadly, when I play a cold melody, anything less than the best is a felony. Sorry. Consider two alternative evolutionary paths. In one, a virus becomes more severe, but not more transmissible. It will cause more disease and death, but the growth is linear. In the other path, a mutating virus becomes neither more nor less virulent, but more contagious. It will cause increases in disease and death that are exponential rather than linear. Adam Kurcharski at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine explains the math here. Maybe we'll take a look at that. If this is the evolutionary trajectory of SARS-CoV-2, we're in for seemingly endless cycles of outbreaks and remissions, social restrictions and relaxations, lockdowns and reopenings. Can't remember the name, but there's also the phobia of doctors that is present in some countries that have had illegal and immoral medical testing. Yeah, so that's here in the United States, right? That's here in the United States. People of color here in the United States were tested on like the Tuskegee experiments or something like that. The tested syphilis on people of color. Yeah, that's been a big thing here, and we read an article on that of weeks ago, maybe months ago, about that issue here in the United States and getting people of color to not be afraid of vaccines is going to be a big problem. The United States has a horrible history of course, murdering people of color for fun and profit, right? Yeah, that is a problem. That is going to be a problem. And again, that also comes down to it's not just going to be overcoming that, but also having people of color who are disproportionately cast down into poverty to have, be able to get the time off from work. Itrophobia, that's what it's called? Interesting. You get the time off from work, get access to healthcare to be able to do that, although I think the vaccine is available free here, so that won't be so much of an issue, but being ready to do it and feel safe enough to do it because of the U.S.'s horrific history towards that sort of thing. Yeah, that is definitely going to be a problem. Definitely going to be a problem, unfortunately. At least in rich countries, we will probably get vaccinated a couple times a year against the latest variant in circulation, but never fast or comprehensively enough to achieve herd immunity. Again, this is what the pharmaceutical industry wants because it becomes a never-ending source of income. Defeating it is the worst possible thing for the pharmaceutical industries and the medical industry in general, right? I'm not arguing for defeatism here. In the grand sweep of history, COVID-19 is still a relatively mild pandemic. Smallpox killed 9 out of 10 Native Americans after the Spanish brought it to the Americas in the 16th century. The Black Death carried off about half of the Mediterranean population when it first came to Europe in the 16th century. Worldwide, the coronavirus has killed fewer than 4 in 10,000 so far. And with our science and technology, we're armed as our ancestors never were. But we must also be realistic. Resilience demands that we include this new scenario into our planning. The good news is that we keep getting better at responding. In each lockdown, for example, we damage the economy less than in the previous one, and we may achieve scientific breakthroughs that will eventually make life better. Our brave new world needn't be dystopian, but it won't look anything like the old world. Yeah, I agree. It's much like we were talking about, that if we don't get vaccines to deal effectively with some of these, like the B117 virus, it's never going to end. It's hard here because there's definitely an incentive for pharmaceutical companies to not eradicate it, yep, but at the same time, this feels like the cancer cure argument that one exists, but cancer makes so much money. Yeah, exactly right, and that's exactly what I'm pointing to, and that's one of those issues with COVID as well. Cancer is a cash cow. COVID is going to be a cash cow for them. They don't want it to go away. I mean, that's one of the reasons why hemp, right, was originally outlawed because of the war on drugs, right? But it's one of the reasons why the pharmaceutical industries wants to keep it out, keep it illegal, because once people start doing CBD oil and hemp and all that sort of stuff, it's radically going to change things. You know, it's just pharmaceutical industries and health industry is going to lose a lot of money once hemp and pot is legalized. It's going to be huge, huge loss of money. And again, that's, you know, the many issues with capitalism, right? Not that we bitch about that at all here, right? But yes. All right. So we've reached the 2-hour mark. My point is that the cancer cure is just a conspiracy. I don't want to fall down this. Oh, yeah, I haven't heard anything on that, but I wouldn't doubt it if, you know, they found something that works really well, and, you know, like typical capitalist companies, they'll buy out the patent, they'll buy out the company so that it doesn't get out there sooner than they want to, so it doesn't affect their bottom line. You know, someone's done that. I mean, I'm just that jaded to consider that. I don't think they've necessarily found a cure for it, right? Because that's a huge win, but there are treatments out there, I'm sure, that have been purchased and kept off the market just so that it doesn't affect their company's bottom line. All right, so 2-hour mark. This is the first call for last comments. Anything you want to say? Random at all? Got D&D this weekend. Hallelujah. Can't wait. I think I've got groceries to deal with here when I get done. I think. 2 hours. Yeah, I did. It flew by very, very quickly. So the wife went shopping, so we got to decontaminate everything. Yes, wishing you guys a good health. Exactly. Stay COVID-free, stay healthy, so that we can get our shots. It's only Tuesday. It is only Tuesday. Yeah, I was super tired yesterday because I've been staying up till midnight playing that game. And so Monday was a huge drag. So slow. And good health care. Rub it in, dude. Rub it in. Real nice. Someday, maybe. Someday, maybe we'll get decent health care for everyone. But I don't know. You know, the Democrats, right? They control everything, but they're like, yeah, nah, fuck health care, right? They could pass universal health care. Yeah, well, like I said, the beginning, right? I thought we were playing this weekend, that we're playing this last weekend, but I was wrong. It was like, oh, fuck, dude. So I was already primed this last weekend for this coming Sunday, so I'm carrying that with me. Yeah. Always looking forward to the weekend, because the work week is just garbage. Garbage. What else do I got? Hopefully my taxes will be done soon, because, I mean, they might file for an extension. They've had to do that a few years. They've done something with PayGo before. We can't. Oh, yeah, that's fucking bullshit. Yeah, fucking PayGo. That's fucking fuckity fuck. Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, okay, so let me cover this. Fucking PayGo. Fucking fuckity fuck. Now you've given me something to bitch about. All right, here we go. Fucking fuck. Fucking fuck. Excuse my French, but fuck. PayGo. Where do I have that? Economic. It's under economic. That's where it is. PayGo is a bunch of fucking bullshit. Come on. Here we go. So, this is all a ploy to keep you streaming longer. Well, she did a good job with that. So, PayGo, I need to add this in here. It's a rule in Congress that was passed to say that you can't pass a bill unless you can pay for it through taxation, which is not required at all at the federal level. PayGo, which is it's a fucking, oh my god, rage. Republicans have in the past so damn. Well, yeah, the Republicans actually don't care. The Republicans, I mean, actually, the Republicans want to destroy everything, so they love that rule, so they can inflict austerity upon everything, so they can reduce funding on all the government services, gut it, impose all sorts of amazing taxes to fuck over us. Whereas the Democrats, they just play ball, even though they don't have to. Stands for pay as you go. Is a budget rule requiring tax cuts and mandatory spending increases must be offset. Yeah, so if you spend the money, if you want to spend money, you have to have taxes for it. And that also helps to prevent deficit spending as well, because, they bitch about the deficit even though it doesn't fucking matter at all. Oh my God, you just pissed me off, Grilly Bear. Arrgh. Yeah, the debt ceiling is another one of those bullshit things. The bird rule, I need to up these. Yes, it's for everything. Yep. Or just healthcare. It's just convenient for healthcare. A way to keep that from becoming a thing. Yeah, let's look at the bird rule too. I need to update this because I don't always remember what these are. What the fuck is the bird rule? Bird rule is also stupid. Think either is a part of the budget, but if emergency, then not. Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't gone that far into it. The bird rule restricts what can be included in reconciliation legislation in the Senate at its core. The rule prohibits provisions that are viewed as extraneous. Okay, so that's probably what they were dealing with, trying to keep the $15 minimum wage out by using the bird rule. Actually, I don't think I find this one. I'm gonna have to look this up. I'll look that up. Maybe I have to modify this and change that. I mean, I've just heard about this, but it seems ridiculous to me. How would you have any deficit spending? Exactly. And that's exactly why it's so fucking ridiculous. I mean, even Reagan, right? Romney said in the 80s, I think it was, that Reagan proves that deficit spending doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter. It's a fucking fraud. And when you get into MMT, modern monetary theory, it goes ahead and explains why it makes no sense. So, yeah. Fucking Pago. Arrgh. Arrgh. All right. So, Girly Bear, thank you for pissing me off before sending me off onto my day. Appreciate that. Not that I wasn't filled with rage before, but this just made it worse. It became a rule in the 90s, I think. That makes sense. All right. Anyone else want to piss me off before we call it a day? Yeah, the fucking Pago rule. Always not a problem. Yeah. All right, last call. I'll have to look up that bird rule and see. I remember reading about it, but I don't remember exactly what it was about. This one, the article we looked at, it seemed to say it made sense, but I don't know. Back on. So I'm Friday 11:30 Central, and then Saturday at 3 Central. If you look down below, my schedule is down there. It should be, at least. I have it listed in text. I also have a countdown thing there as well. Yeah. So Tuesdays at 5, Friday at 11:30 a.m. Central, and Saturday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. So that is when I am on. All right, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. I appreciate it. Stay healthy, stay COVID-free, and have a great week. Peace.
Just me and you, let's make up all the rules. Count to 10 and watch the stars turn blue. Watch the stars.